The state funeral of Queen Elizabeth II, Britain's longest ruling monarch, has come to an end. Her coffin now being carried out of Westminster Abbey. Later this afternoon, the bells of the Abbey will be rung, fully muffled, as is the tradition, following the funeral of the sovereign. There were some 2,000 high-profile guests, dignitaries, heads of state who gathered to honor the memory of the Queen, who saw some 15 prime ministers and 14 presidents during her reign. Well, France 24's Catherine Nicholson is also outside Westminster Abbey. She joins us now live from there. Catherine, such a moving ceremony there we all just witnessed.
Indeed, it was a mixture of the personal and also the state matters. This head of state, head of the Church of England, having her state funeral here, but obviously also a family funeral as well, with some more personal words about the Queen, particularly from the Archbishop of Canterbury in his sermon. I think if I just turn and give you a bit of space behind me, you can see the Queen's coffin being placed onto the state gun carriage once again by the bearer party, and that is going to now continue on through central London in a procession to Wellington Arch, a well-known monument about 2 kilometres away from here in central London. So the solemnity does continue. I can tell you that there's almost near silence here at Westminster Abbey. Of course, some of the reporters like myself reporting currently, but there are dozens and dozens of members of the military regiments that are taking part in this procession. They were assembling in almost silence during the Queen's state funeral, getting ready for that procession. This route lined up to Wellington Arch by the armed forces, 7 groups, each with a service band. So yes, as you can see probably behind me, the Queen's coffin being secured onto that gun carriage, which will once again be pulled by those members of the Royal Navy, and there will be a walking procession behind the state gun carriage, which King Charles and members of the royal family are going to take part in.
Many years in advance, including in part with the Queen's permission herself. Details like we heard her piper playing there at the end of the ceremony, that song that she picked out, Sleep Dearie Sleep.
Yes, there was a lot of the Queen's personal touches in her own funeral. As you said, it has been years in the planning. There's a sort of a protocol side of British monarch's funeral. There's a hereditary funeral planner for the monarch that's held by the highest ranking Duke in England, currently the 18th Duke of Norfolk, known as the Earl Marshal. And that's a job that's passed down from father to eldest son throughout the years. That was very much the protocol side of things. As you said, the personal touches, the Queen's own influence on her own funeral. We know that she sat down with the various high-ranking members of the Church of England over the years and discussed what this event would be like. One of the hymns, "The Lord is my shepherd," which we heard early on in the service, said to be one of the Queen's personal favourites since she was a child. And we know that she told the former Archbishop of York, John Sentamu, in their discussions, that she didn't want it to be a long and boring funeral. She didn't want people to be bored when they were watching this, and she wanted to keep things brief, and it seems that she had her wish.
And it is indeed, now we're seeing, Catherine, these pictures of what's happening now just immediately behind you. Such a massive undertaking today, especially when you consider the Queen's body was lying in state until just very early this morning there.
Absolutely, yes. The final members of the public to process past the Queen's coffin in Westminster Hall did so at 6:30 a.m. local time. It is now midday here in London, so just 5.5 hours ago. There's literal military precision really coming into play here. I'm sure you can see and hear that we now have the massed ranks of the various parts of the British military beginning that procession. They've all come together in absolutely precise manner, as I said, during the funeral there, and taking part in that procession now off to Wellington Arch as planned. Things seem to be going almost exactly to time as well. I was concerned at one point that things were running a little bit behind, but we do seem to have caught up, and the coffin is due to reach Wellington Arch in around 45 minutes' time.
Catherine, thank you so much for that. We'll be checking back in with you in just a moment. That's our Catherine Nicholson, just outside Westminster Abbey.